So like when I'm sitting here later, she's just, this is probably just for Mary Beth, so it's already.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it's saying recording.
Where are you from? Ready?
And so whoever's speaking needs to go and center themselves. Do not pay attention to what's going on the screen. Would you rather me put a piece of paper over the top of this? Because I can. I'll do it. Let's see.
There we go.
At work, the other papers are too tall.
See the screen, it's fine.
You'll probably be able to see all
Hi, I'm pretty good. I spelled my
I need to see where
Yeah. It's my first time meeting these students.
An odd situation. Okay. Are you all ready?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm Erin Gibson. Hi. I teach journalism. I advise the Shield. I am Mary Beth Reese's colleague. She's very sorry she couldn't be here today. She has some other important things to be attending to personally. So we do have the computer running, and so what you can do is just whoever's speaking can come to the middle. So I don't know if you want to move the desk at all or anything, or if you're all fine, that's fine. So you can move things up if you want. These are on rollers.
Just sort of
just so you're not,
hit
yeah.
each other. There we go. It should be okay.
There you go. I'm kind of like things to have right angles. So, all right. So I guess, are you going to acknowledge your guests, or do you want me to? How do you? Okay.
I mean, do you want us to all introduce ourselves?
Well, let's actually have our guests introduce themselves, just so that everybody. I don't know what the situation has been, so let's all go around into the room and introduce ourselves, and then you guys can do and begin.
Hi again, guys. I'm Sam. Speak again.
Virginia Morgan. EO.
I'm Rhett Fleming. Austin Shelley. Ben Hubers.
Melanie Jordan. Cameron Haley.
Susanna Jackson.
Holly Bittner. Okay, so what we did this semester, we have been gathering research from other schools, Homeland Security, USI Public Safety, and our Crisis Communication textbook to develop an active shooter training session for the Liberal Arts Building. We have developed a training booklet along with media materials to carry out the training. First, we're going to hand out surveys to get feedback before actually conducting our tabletop exercise. That could be found on page 39. If you guys could take a few minutes to maybe fill that out for us before we start everything, just to get the general knowledge of the room. And then after we go over everything, we're going to do a post survey, which is on page 41. So let's take some time to do that. Does everybody have pencils or something?
Hi, man.
There you go. Yeah, it's on.
Page 40 was most test. I didn't listen.
No, it's page 39 and 40 is when you're.
Okay.
Those
Yes.
are the 2 pages you want.
Okay.
Yes. And then the post one, yes, don't do that one again.
I started answering questions and thought, hey, this is typical. But I'm just listening to this.
Yeah, that's fine.
Everybody done?
Is everybody good? Okay, awesome. So this is our tabletop exercise, which Ben's gonna be leading you guys through.
So, how many of you have done a tabletop exercise before, or heard of one at least? No, just you two? Okay, all right. Okay, so the exercise basics of a tabletop is training, not a test. There are no wrong answers, no simple solutions, and trying to utilize any previous plans, procedures, anything you've been taught or seen, so on. So the purpose of this tabletop or exercise is to promote teamwork. You clarify roles and responsibilities you may have, assess team capability, improve performance, increase knowledge and experience, and build your confidence. So starting off Wednesday, February 11th, 2:05 p.m., a student has been expelled after poor academic performance in several incidences involving USI public safety. While he walks across campus to his car, he yells vulgar words and tells other students the university will regret treating him poorly. Several students look concerned about what he has said. So based on this information, what actions should you consider taking? Who should be informed of this information? And what concerns do you have? You guys would answer. There's no simple.
Anyone's open to like raising their hands and.
Just talk.
I think I would probably put in a care report.
So you go to public safety or something like that? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else? Do you guys have any concerns?
Actually, a care report goes across their cross-section of the university, including the care team, which is other professionals involved, including counseling, student affairs, as well as public safety. So you get a broader base of possible people that could intervene and take action, just not public safety.
So the answer I was kind of looking for was somebody tell public safety, get a phone call, dean, something like that. Something's better than nothing. Friday, February 13th, 12:30 p.m. during busy hours, a loud popping sound is heard inside the LA building. An employee from the second floor runs into the dean's office upstairs screaming someone is shooting in the building. What actions should you consider taking? How are you communicating with employees? Who's communicating with who? Who's taking charge of this situation? You guys do anything? What would you do if somebody was running upstairs and screaming and there's a
I'm
shooter?
telling you all.
There's no simple answers. I mean, this is.
Yeah.
We did this too, and we just kind of stared at her at first, and then.
Yeah. Well, I think in this situation, you have definitely public safety. Somebody in the dean's office would do that. While another person's probably out trying to find the dean, know where they are.
So you get up and
that's
move.
like Virginia and I work in the dean's office, so.
Yeah, I would probably try and gather everyone.
Okay, so
Location
you're.
that a door can be closed and locked.
Okay.
Aside from the windows.
It's a question that comes up often, calling public safety and our emergency number. Correct answer versus 911.
Mhm. That's something we're going to
Get
get to.
serious because deputies are on campus, they'll be here quicker to call our emergency number. There, we would be dispatching officers and starting to make some confirmations. There, once we have some confirmed information, we most likely be putting out a rave message that this building, we have reports, active shooter, run, hide, fight.
All right, so that's what we're going to kind of get into. We're just going to go through all three of them here. So we're going to start off with running. You decide running is the best option. You and the employees start to head out of the office and shots can still be heard downstairs. What direction should you head? What concerns do you have when you're running away? Should you take anything with you? You guys have-
Running away from where the shots are.
You're just gonna pick a
Opposite
direction to go?
direction.
Distance between you and whoever the shooter is, leave behind whatever you have.
So you're going to leave everything behind.
I was trying to take my phone.
You might take your phone. Okay.
You can't, if you do it safely.
I haven't heard from you. What are you doing? You're just observing. This is for everybody.
Everyone gets to know this information.
All right. Okay. So we're not going to take anything with us. We're just going to pick a direction and go. Okay.
Except for a phone.
Except for home. Yeah, maybe phone.
If we're safe.
So you're going to make it to a stairwell on the 3rd floor, and there are other people running down the stairs. Following them out the door, you see people running outside in panic. While running away, you can still hear popping noises inside the LA building. What do you think is a safe distance? When should you return to campus? Should you go back to help others?
Safe distance would be as far as you can get away. We're going to keep all this and when you should return to campus, get official notification from the university, not social media, not anything else, but for us, we would be sending as public safety a brief follow-up message that say everything's clear. And should you go back to help others? No. Our first responders, that will be their task. In the event something tragic would happen and we needed ancillary help, we would be calling for that. Now, if there are other things that we can need down the road, say in terms of recovery or triage, or we may need to interview law enforcement as witnesses down the road, we would make those notifications. And we would send out messages like, if you were involved in this or you have information, contact this number. So that's what we would do too. We may also push out some information to encourage you to make those connections with parents and other family members for free, and to tell them that you're safe and you're out of that situation.
I'm gonna add something real quick. What before hearing like public safety talk about it, do you think that you would know if you should return back to campus or like if you should go back and help? You know your friends in there and you know they're in trouble. Like, what would you guys? You know what I mean? Like in that situation.
Well, yeah, I'm pretty self-centered, so I'm getting myself out.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like everybody else is kind of in charge of getting themselves out. So,
Right.
yeah. And going back, yeah, I wouldn't go back until I got a reg alert. If I was safely at my phone, and if I didn't, I would just wait until I, could get somewhere to find out if it's safe to come back. So.
More likely, you would not be able to get back in that area for a while because
Being closed
it's
off.
going to be swarmed.
Yeah.
It's going to be closed off for a while. Come back and approach someone in authority, let them know, hey, I was a witness to this. Give you my name and number.
That's
Like
good.
Sam said, we would put out contact.
So that's a good one. An update, an hour has passed, and you can see many police around the campus. You decide to return with several employees and students that have been with you the whole time. So we're going to go to hiding. You decide to stay, hide in a room. You barricade the door with tables and chairs. When turning off the lights, a frantic banging is heard outside the door. An unknown woman is begging to be let inside. Should you let her in? What action should you consider to take? That's probably a pretty good answer. What concerns do you have? Should you let her in? I mean, she's banging on the door,
We
begging.
don't know if she has a gun.
She could be the shooter. That's one thing we'll bring up.
You can get quiet, you can make sure that they think that there's nothing happening.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a very good point.
Thought on this now, it's been run high fight. A lot of different schools are changing hide to barricade.
Barricade.
Run barricade, fight. So putting something between yourself and that shooter is key. Make it hard for them to get to you because what is their goal? Kill them in as short amount of time as possible. Make it hard for them, unless they're looking for you specifically.
Right. That's something else. Targeting maybe the dean or just whoever, specific professor. Yeah, could be the shooter, like you said. Don't want her in. So a few minutes later, someone else is bashing the door and several loud shots are heard. After a few more minutes pass and there's no noise outside the door, the shooter may have left. What concerns do you have? Should you check the door? Should you take any action at all?
Stay until somebody says all clear.
So you shaking your head, you say stay till it's all clear, like they said too. Police will be here.
Someone in authority,
Right.
as you know, public safety, deputy sheriff, volunteer fireman is coming through and triaging and looking. Say, hey, it's all clear, we need you to go to the specific.
You know, and I know phone banks will be overrun, but, you know, if you could get a message out to public safety and do it quietly, whisper, or saying, you know, we're in room 2206, there's 6 of us, we're safe. That would let law enforcement know as they search that building that there's friendlies in here and we can make that announcement.
I have a question on that. Is there a text line? Is there a text?
Not yet, no.
Not yet.
That is something that we're looking at.
I mean, I'm just thinking that would be a quiet way to do it.
Right now, and outside
Somebody
outside of the campus, there is a text to 911. You could send an email. It's not going to get checked for a long time.
Yeah. I just wondered.
That's a good
We're
one.
working on those mobile apps right now, we just haven't found one that really fits in.
Yeah, and to let you know, what he said, we are looking at more of there's all kinds of apps out there, obviously, money drives, everything. Some of them, you can just hit the button and it'll geo your location and we can get that information. Some of them, it's not quite as advanced, so, you know, it's gonna be risk, reward, cost, and you have to factor
So now we
it
have to have people monitor that too.
together. Right.
So for nearly an hour, there's no sound in the entire building, and employees hiding with you are receiving texts and phone calls about the shooting. Emergency personnel can now be seen outside the building. Several employees want to leave the room. Who's responsible for those employees? Or in the dean's office here. Should you leave? What happens if the shooting isn't over? So we might have the dean in there with them, we might not have the dean. That's just the location that we'd be at right now. So is anybody responsible for anybody else really? That's kind of one thing. Should you leave? Nobody's at the door yet. You just see them outside.
Encourage everybody to stand it.
Just stay put.
Someone can
Yeah.
find something.
Said that earlier. Yeah. So, and if the shooting isn't over, the shooter could just be down the hall. So police and SWAT arrive outside your door and tell you to come out, with your hands up. The shooting is now over. There's a lot of recovery work to still do now. So this one's going to be the fight. You realize that the shooter is coming up the stairs very quickly from the popping noises. There is no time to lock the door and barricade it. An employee looks at you for leadership, and some of the things real quick, like a stapler, a paperweight, anything solid. What should you do? Do you pick up a weapon for yourself? Do you tell the employees to help you or tell them to hide? What would you do?
I would tell them first to spread out.
So you spread out.
Everybody's gonna weapon.
There you go. Everybody get something.
Obviously, be quiet, you turn lights off, because you want concealment. You can keep barricade, still concealment, but you want to make sure it's spread out. Quietly formulate a plan. If he comes in, we're going to do this. So I would start saying that it's like, I'm going to hit you with this, and you act. You collectively come up with a plan.
It's a short little time, so I'm better than nothing.
The main intent of the fight part of it is to alter plans. Every single time that it's gotten to this level, and the shooter's made to alter his plans, the shooting stops. So it is successful. That's why it's one of the choices. This very last one, because usually someone gets hurt in this somehow or another, but it stops. Lessons harm them.
And fighting, it's you or him. So update. The killer has now reached your door and is about to enter. You take your weapon and hit him over the back of the head. The employee, one of your employees dives on him to hold him down. Shooter doesn't put up the fight because he is currently disoriented. Do you run away now that he is hurt? Should you touch his weapons? Should you wait for police? What would you guys do? You got him pinned. Would you take his weapon?
Probably somebody else has.
So you're gonna leave him there and you're just gonna dip your ball.
Well, I would think, I'm not sure about this.
And at the same time, you're not really sure if there's other shooters on campus either, so.
I'm a no to touching his weapons.
Well, something that I would think about is if there was two people, I'd probably grab it.
Somebody else
I mean,
might do
maybe
it,
it's not a
yeah.
great idea, but if there's a second shooter, I shoot guns and hunt, so I'm comfortable with grabbing it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
a horrible
Somebody-
situation.
somebody that's comfortable, but I'm not.
Yeah, see, I don't know how to work a gun at all, so I'd probably try to keep it away, just away from that person and just kind of like put a trash can.
Like it's a rat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a swagger.
So like sit on the trash can or something, just so there's no weapon, you know.
I'd probably continue to hurt him further if I could.
So you're just gonna beat him until he's
Okay.
unconscious.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, you know, if he's, I mean, obviously you kick the gun away.
Yeah.
And then I'm just.
learning so much about
I mean, it's you or him, that's fair. If somebody, I couldn't kill another person, but if it was between me and them, I wouldn't even think I would do it.
Right, I mean,
So.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's great about when you do presentations like this, because every person is in a different place.
Exactly.
You know, if you've got a skill set and you feel comfortable, you may do that. You know, I forget which of the two videos that I showed you, but one of them suggested that, you know, you take a trash can or something and cover that weapon.
Mhm.
You know, that might be a possibility, and again, maybe very dependent upon the group. You know, just because that person is not actively resisting doesn't mean he won't.
Yeah.
You know, won't, so we need to do that. So, you know, should you wait for police? There's a chance that there's another shooter. So you know, maybe you're looking for a law enforcement or first responder response, and one person's dedicated to tell them we've got him in here in a very safe manner. And that's what's, you know, I think, you know, that's the whole thing about tabletop. There is no right or wrong answer. But, you know, we always stress you've got to do something. You know, otherwise you're victims.
Would caution you from grabbing the weapon and reverting back to number one, running down the hallway.
That's probably a bad idea.
That's what I was
After
Yeah,
the
because then
shooting
they could think
started.
you're the bad
They're
guy.
gonna shoot you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
Stand your ground, make that decision, hide the gun, if you think you have to put it back there. Take it off. If you have the gun, you're in control. At least with this guy.
So while you and an employee are currently laying on him, a campus police officer comes up the stairs with his gun showing. You call for him to help and he arrests the shooter. You and the employee are told to walk outside with your hands in the air. The incident is now over. Employees are showing concern about reporters on campus. How will you prepare them? Some employees don't have their car keys. They're concerned about getting home. What do you do next? You guys gonna?
I think now that you're saying that, or somebody to, I'll get my keys later.
So that's one thing I'm just gonna say. Got the car and you might be able to leave, but to call somebody, like, you're okay.
And will you be in a physical place to drive home?
Right.
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's not something you experience every day.
And then just drive home.
Just drive
Yeah.
home.
Well, it's the other way.
Trying to get out of the situation, yeah, that might be hard at the beginning. How you traffic during.
Dangerous part of that incident is, but it was only started for public safety. And there's a lot of work to do, talk to. It's a business continuity issue because you've got news and information coming, and the reporters, you've got vice presidents and above to talk about continuity of classes the rest of the day or the next day or even that week, depending on how many people are killed. So you've got a lot of steps that are starting. You've got students and employees to care for the counseling center. Bringing more people on campus if needed. There's a lot to do in that recovery.
Right, and there is a whole, incident command structure. Those roles will again be divvied out. You know, obviously public safety, we do have the first responders, and we've got that medical side we'll be working with. As that lessens, then we're going to take more of a containment security. We're going to help keep, like if it happens here, keep this building, you know, free for people. Establish working condition information where they don't have reporters staged, so we can give them information as a university in a consistent time and fashion. And we would in hopes try to keep the reporters away from student and faculty. We know that's not going to happen. We're going to try as much to keep that in place. We would look at then as far as like things like keys and belongings, depending on what that crime scene looks like. You know, we would work to facilitate that without exposing someone to additional trauma. So if it's maybe a back hallway where there's, you know, safely get you to a room and get your keys, we'll try that. We may be sending officers in to collect bags and bring out to you. So, but this is going to be a long process. And then so for some people, it's just going to be starting. Obviously, there's going to be, you know, trying to just get people back together. You know, roommates together, families together. That's, you know, the reunification is going to be also an issue.
It's the best settle is even our staff. I know at the sheriff's office after traumatic incidents, we debrief our people, make sure they're still in a good place. They've handled this, close it off in their mind in right places. So I remember after the 2005 tornado, we did 19 death investigations there. We met with one of the psychologists, just talk, be a good place. We talk about it, making sure people are showing signs of anxiety and distress. Because Sam and I did this between us probably 60-something years, seeing this kind of stuff nonstop. Some people deal with it, some people don't. So that will be extended to the university also. Staff, faculty, students, to make sure that we can assist in any way in those resources.
Yeah, and you never know, that person that's in the library may be triggered just as bad as the person who was in here. You know, we never know how that's going to affect. You know, so that's something that reaches a lot. So that's where, you know, and this, quite honestly, is probably where, as an organization as a whole, is we have traditionally left this part out. And I think it's very important, you know, and we've got first responders have gotten much better because, you know, years ago we didn't debrief as much and we didn't focus on how people were affected, you know, most of them. We were just worried about finishing it and just let the cards fall. And we've done much better with using, you know, counselors and peer support. So that's, I think we still need to grow, but that's an area that has been identified. The recovery is part of it.
Shooting's over, lots of things now start. So that's going to be the end of my tabletop. It's been great. Turn this over to other people.
All right, so I'll be just giving an overview over the crisis communication plan and why it's important to have one in place. So it's obvious that the school shootings at universities and elementary schools, high schools have been overwhelmed in the past decade or so, right? And according to educationweek.org, in 2018, K through 12 shootings resulted in 24 different incidences throughout the country, killing or injuring 114 different people. 28 were children, 7 were faculty. With these statistics and organized plans set into place, one that makes sense for the liberal arts movement. The plan is just not something that could save lives, but bring peace to mind to people who attend the school and the university and just the liberal arts building in general. As a campus, security, peace of mind is something that students put high on priority as the campus community. Giving students and staff a plan of where to go, how to react, and a way of communicating could all be key goals in having a plan set in place. However, run, hide, and fight are three steps to follow in case of an active shooter event. So the purpose of having a crisis communication plan is basically it's defined as having a time of intense difficulty, trouble, or danger. So this could be a turning point for the university. From there, it could be like for an organization, if this were to occur, negative press conferences could occur out of it, or just releases. And so the same could occur for the school if one was not set into place. The purpose of having a crisis communication plan is to minimize the effects of a crisis on a business, organization, or an individual. So here at USI specifically, those affected would be, example, students, the university, the staff, and also the stakeholders of the school. Physical harm could occur to the faculty and students along with financial ruins. As stakeholders, however, could affect the university financially with no plan set into place because they could withdraw money for future projects.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about triggers and signs of an active shooter. So an active shooter is an individual actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill as many people as possible in a confined and populated area, typically using firearms. There are usually triggers that initiate an active shooter situation. These include, but are not limited to, mental illness, bullying, lack of cognitive control, poor relationship with family, friends, or a significant other. So according to Homeland Security, indicators or potential violent behaviors are increased use of alcohol or drugs, unexplained absenteeism or physical complaints, depression, severe mood swings, unstable emotions, increased talks of issues at the home, and an increase in unsolicited comments about violence, firearms, weapons, and crimes. So public safety really emphasizes see something, say something. So when public safety is contacted, consequences for the active shooter can be averted. So public safety can be contacted at 812-492-7777 from a campus phone, dial extension 7777. So I thought it was really important to include this because just at the beginning of this semester, I didn't even have public safety in my phone. I wasn't signed up for rave alerts, and I was like, wow, this is important. And I feel like a lot of students really don't because I graduated on Saturday. I didn't even have it this semester. So I thought that was really important to include just for students in general, maybe the beginning of a class, mention, hey, you need to put this number in your phone. So that's a point that really needs to be made here.
Okay, so crisis communications is important because first off, it's not like crisis management and like an active shooter situation, you can't really manage the shooter until he's apprehended. So it's really important to emphasize the communication part. Mostly it's to prevent chaos inside the crisis. If no one knows what they're doing or who they're supposed to contact, it's just going to be a madhouse, and you'll have 8 different people contacting public safety, tying up the phone lines. Really, you just need one person. So, for example, if someone came into the dean's office, you need to know that one person who is supposed to call public safety if the situation were to arise. So also make sure everybody's on the same page in an active shooter situation or in any kind of crisis. Like I said, it will create chaos and it just makes the situation worse and further like damages everything's going on. So the goal is just to know who is supposed to do what.
So we created this policy with the motive to save lives of students and faculty in an active shooter situation through reasonable protection methods, which are run, hide, and fight, which you know. The purpose of the policy is to provide instruction and guidance to effectively address the response of the liberal arts building of USI to an active shooter incident. So when it comes to the planning, the first step is to form a collaborative planning team. This should involve representatives from across the university, first responders, and other stakeholders that may hold responsibilities in emergency management. The core planning team that we came up with as a group is USI Public Safety, Vanderburgh County Sheriff's Department, the Evansville Police Department, the Evansville Federal Bureau of Investigation, Deaconess Hospital Emergency Room, and the Perry Township Fire Department. And then for our list of key publics for USI and the Liberal Arts Building, we have board members, shareholders, financial partners, investors, community leaders, customers, clients, suppliers, vendors, neighbors of the university, members of the media. So before the chance of a crisis, each person and party should be aware of their and other members' roles to shorten the chain of communication in the crisis. So this includes holding meetings, visiting evacuation sites, sharing an appropriate literature to the key publics, and publishing key information throughout the liberal arts building. The media spokesperson we have chosen is Kendra Strupp. I think a couple people actually talked to her throughout the making of this plan, but she is the Vice President of Marketing and Communications and was chosen because of her previously completed media training and familiarity with USI's community. She also has a knowledge of the communications here at USI. So after recognition of the planning team, key publics, and spokesperson, it's essential to understand and anticipate the threats and hazards in order to assess the probability that a specific hazard will occur. So to assess risks of an active shooter in the liberal arts building, the following must be indicated. The probability or frequency of the situation happening, the magnitude or extent of expected damage, the amount of time to warn the building and universities and occupants, and the duration of the crisis, as well as the follow-on effects. So without awareness of the threats that are posed, proper action and communication cannot be.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the layout of the liberal arts building. So if you guys want to refer to this handout that I've given you at the beginning. So as we all know, the liberal arts, it has a lower level, first level, second level, and third level. And there's actually a fourth level as well, known as the LA Penthouse. And I had spoken to Environmental Health and Safety Manager Brian Morrison, and just seeing if I could get that type of floor plan because it wasn't on the website along with these rest of these. He said that I talked to a few people about this request, and we have decided not to release the LA Penthouse floor plan. So just in case if you're wondering, why that isn't there, it wasn't included. He didn't give any further instruction. But just referring to these floor plans, it's really nice because as you can see at the top, it has kind of like a key. It shows the primary exit by the red arrow, the evacuation area, and then also the areas that are shaded in green, the severe weather gathering area. So I found this on the usi.edu website, and this is my first year being here at USI. I'm a transfer student, and this was the first time that I'd ever seen these maps. And granted, I know there are a few, after I'd seen, I was kind of like more aware of my surroundings. There were some, I believe, by the stairs, and then by the elevators as well. And granted, like I said, I'm a first-time student, but I mean, my peers, have you guys seen these prior to this class, the maps?
I don't feel like I pay as much attention to like signs and stuff.
Yeah, and I'm curious just for you guys, I'm public safety, I'm sure you are aware of these, but or have you ladies seen these before? Yes, okay, well that's,
Yeah, by the elevators.
yes, yeah. I find these maps to be very, very, helpful, especially, if you're not familiar with the USI campus and just coming on. But I feel like it also needs to be used in the right way. You can have something that looks really good, but it just has to be used in the right way. And Cameron kind of mentioned this too with the number, this public safety number. just kind of like on the first day of class or whatever, to kind of like mention that out. And same thing with this, whether it's orientation, first day of classes, I mean, I think it needs to be mandatory for the teachers to go through and be like, okay, if this situation ever were to happen, here's our gathering place, because I don't even know where my gathering place is, and from being in this building. So I think it definitely needs to be mandatory, maybe starting with orientation, first day of classes, and even maybe put in like the packets that are handed out to the students as well, and just include it in the syllabus and just going from there. But I believe the biggest key and like where to start at is that transition point from not knowing and making this well aware is starting including it by, the teacher's talks at the beginning or whatnot. So emergency situation, it may not go as planned. We can know what to say, run, hide, fight, if an active shooter, do this if a fire were to happen, all type of stuff, but obviously it's probably not going to go as planned when we have that type of procedure in mind. But statistics are shown, if you do have that type of plan set in play, then it's better off than obviously going out with a plan.
Okay, I'm just going to talk to you guys about kind of preparing for an active shooter, run, hide, fight, and some other things. So when you're preparing, you need to be aware of your surroundings all the time. So as soon as you walk into a room, kind of think about your first and second exits that you have. Obviously, you're there to only one, but when you leave, think about like staircases that you would take. And then sign up for rave alerts. This is our little logo. When you log into your My USI, clicking on the rave alert. I don't have my rave notifications on personally, but I think like what you were saying, kind of orientation, maybe first day of classes, teachers being like, you need to have your rave notifications on. So you can sign up for your rave notifications, and then understand that gunfire may sound artificial, and then assume that any loud, mysterious noise that you're hearing on campus could be gunfire. Once you are discovered by an active shooter, you need to contact public safety first at 812-492-7777, and that is the emergency phone number that needs to be used at all times. Provide your name, exact location, any weapons that you may have saw, the shooter's description if possible, and then describe the condition of any victims that you may have seen. So, am I talking to someone else's? Okay, good. So the phone number that I've talked about, providing your name, exact location. The main goal of public safety and police officers is isolating and taking down the shooter as quickly as possible. So try to just stay out of the way of that. So through run, hide, and fight, during run, you need to have an escape route like I've talked about. Keep that plan in mind in each room that you're in. Leave all of your belongings behind. I know you guys mentioned kind of picking up your phone, which would be nice for the rave notifications, but if you can't, just leave it. Evacuate regardless of whether others plan to follow you or not. Help others escape if possible, if you all do choose to evacuate. Do not try to stay behind and help the wounded. And then keep your hands visible at all times and call 911 after you've called public safety if you're safe. For hide, you need to hide in an area out of the shooter's view, lock your door, and block the entry to the hiding place, and silence your cell phone completely, not even the vibrate setting, and then just remain quiet. For fight, fight only as a last resort and only when your life is in imminent danger. Attempt to incapacitate the shooter, so like what we were talking about, tabletop, stapler, anything heavy, your laptop. Act with as much physical aggression as possible. Improvise weapons that you can throw, and then commit to your actions because your life truly does depend on it. So if you choose to fight, you need to be fighting. So information to provide to operators would be the location of the shooter that you've heard, the number of shooters if you've heard multiple, the physical description of shooters if you've seen them by chance, the number and the type of weapons if you are familiar with weapons that you've seen them with, and then it'd be nice to kind of estimate the potential victims that you would think would be in the location to give to the operators. And then this is pretty important. Once law enforcement arrives, just try to remain calm, follow given instructions that they've said, drop any items in your hands. You need to kind of raise your hands and spread your fingers just so they know, like drop your phone obviously, just so they know that you don't have anything in them.
You always need to keep your hands visible, avoid making fast movements towards officers, avoid pointing, screaming, or yelling, and then do not ask any questions. So for our lockdown procedures, in this room specifically, people hiding inside of the building. So in this room, of course, you need to turn off the lights and barricade the door. Everyone should get away from the door and spread out around the room instead of together in a group. That's something that Mary Beth, when we were all kind of, because as we've grown up and we've heard about active shooter drills, we've all, in elementary school, we were all in a group in an area. And if an active shooter can get in the door, then they've got you right then and there. So it's best to spread out, not be in a concealed or confined area, and then hide behind walls, tables, chairs, or anything concealing from the shooter. And also try not to hide somewhere that is unescapable. Stay hidden until law enforcement arrives, and do not open the door to anyone unfamiliar. Unknown voices, like we talked about on the tabletop, may be the shooter attempting to lure people out from hiding places. And in case of choosing the fight method, students and staff should be armed at all times with backpacks, books, laptops, and anything available.
So I will be talking about the recovery. The recovery efforts from the reputation image from a communication standpoint will primarily be handled by the university communications department. The first step that human resources and our management should engage in after the active shooter has been incapacitated and is no longer a threat. So the first step that would need to be taken place is after they're gathered in a designated area, accounting of the individuals should take place. This would determine, like you guys have both mentioned, if anyone is injured or if anyone is missing. The next step that would need to be taken place would be then notifying families of the individuals that were affected by the active shooter, so they don't go into greater discern than what already has taken place, including notification of any casualties. Determining a strategic plan prior to emergency situations would be recommended. The third step would be to accessing the psychological state of individuals at the scene, meaning to help the injured in any way possible, or referring them to a healthcare specialist accordingly. Granted, that would take place as far as coming back into the crime scene, obviously that'd be permitted. The fourth and final step would be to identifying and filling any critical personnel or operating gaps left in the organization as a result of the active shooter. So going forward, if an active shooter were to ever take place here at USI, we feel as if it were important to analyze that recent situation and create an after action report. Just learning from your mistakes and building from that situation forth and everything. The analysis and reporting contained in this report is useful for the following. 1, serving as documentation for response activities. 2, identifying success and failures that occurred during the event. 3, providing an analysis of the effectiveness of the existing emergency action plan. And finally, describing and defining a plan for making improvements to the emergency action plan. So that is the recovery.
So to build on that point, the response, so after the shooter has been neutralized, things have settled down a little bit, still kind of hectic, there needs to be a response. So the relocation and unification process of students, faculty, caregivers, that should be in one centralized location. The site must be large enough to accommodate, like I said, students, staff, volunteers, caregivers, and it is important to have at least a backup site in case your main site is not available. So this site would be used for relocation, and there should be private rooms for counseling, medical treatments, things like that. Students that are entering these relocation sites will not be allowed to bring their backpacks, purses, anything like that, because you don't want to take those chances. And then it is essential for the university to ensure the capability to communicate with non-English speaking students and their families following this active shooter event. So that leads me into transportation. So ideally, the unification or reunification site will be off campus, but still within walking distance, so that these individuals will not have to rely on another form of transportation.
We also need to take into account students, faculty that have a disability or special needs. And then media response. It is important that the media response is prompt, accurate, speedy. Need to know what happened, the incident, the location, any casualties, the status of the active shooter. Those are all of the utmost importance. The crisis communications spokesperson should thoroughly be trained to give responses likely to questions that will be asked by law enforcement. So plans that should be set in place are like pre-agreements with local media for debriefing and holding areas during the crisis. So the media are going to want questions, so there's going to be a needed plan set in place for that. Coordinate with all departments to produce unified factual message to the staff's media, and then set up a toll-free telephone number and social media account to provide updates on the crisis and recovery. So the objectives for that would be to cultivate a semblance of triumph in the face of tragedy. And a good example of this would be the Orlando shooting at the nightclub. I don't know if you, I mean, I'm sure we all remember that, but the PR team did a really good job of turning, I mean, it was a tragedy. I mean, it was sad, but they did a good job of turning everybody and bringing them closer together and like forming a stronger bond. So I think that would be a great idea for, or a good objective for the PR team here. And then rave alerts. The main goal of the rave alerts in a crisis should be issued as soon as the active shooter is on campus, and then alerting students like there's an active shooter on campus, and then when that threat is eliminated and when it was safe to move out of the building. And then the rave alerts could also tell where these reunification facilities are, counseling, medical attention, things like that. And then
So we all are in agreement that we kind of need a little bit more for our active shooter training here at USI, just because we've talked, like last time a lot of us have had any kind of actual hands-on training was high school, middle school, and all that included was turning the lights off and locking the door, which are two things that, you know, only one of us needs to do. And there's more to it. And so we agreed that that's something we need a little bit more of. Between 2011 and 2014, the number of school shootings has tripled. So if you can imagine from 2014 to now, how like important it is that we implement some training. And school shootings are actually the number one like mass casualty like incident in America. Training utilizes everyone's own skills. So like Ben mentioned, you know, if he knows how to use a gun, so he would be able to feel comfortable and safe in that situation. So it's not about telling everyone to do the same thing necessarily, but trying to get everybody on the same page to utilize what you already know to like better yourself and other people and keep everybody safe in that situation.
So I kind of took care of means of notifying people when the training is actually going to occur. So the publics that need to be notified, I talked to Kendra Strupp. She sent me a big long email giving me everybody who actually needs to be notified of the training. So that's students, staff, faculty, and even retirees. She mentioned that we need to let them know that the training is happening. So there will be 2 letters sent prior to the training. The first letter will be sent 2 months prior to the training, and it'll be from President Rashawn, and will focus on safety awareness, acknowledgement of possible crises, school shooting awareness, trainings at other schools, and the public safety's phone number. The second letter will be sent 1 month prior, and it will be from Dean Beebe, acknowledging USI's awareness of school shootings, verifying safety, discussing the development of the training that we kind of created, and the public safety's contact. So these numbers are both located in the appendix of the books we handed out. I wrote, the first one was one that would be sent, signed from President Rashawn, that'd be sent 2 months prior. Second one I wrote was 1 month prior, and that'd be signed by Dean Beebe. So they're a little bit different, just letters that'd be sent out to all those different publics. It's in the back of the appendix. I'm not quite sure what letter it is. But an all campus email will also be sent out to the USI's community to notify the time, location, nature of training. University Communication will send out the email and either be signed by the President Rashawn or Public Safety. Also, an informational story will be written for USI Today. The story will be shared on all social media outlets as well. A media alert will be sent to media, letting them know that it is not an emergency, so no TV stations all around the area, all that. And then local police stations will also be notified this is only a drill. And a rave alert will also be issued indicating time, location of training. So for all these communications, we're kind of just letting all the publics know that this is just a training, kind of covering our backs for anything that could happen. Because someone could be walking up, student could be walking past a liberal arts building and just freak out. So that's why we're kind of making sure every single student, even retirees, are notified of this training. And we don't want the police station coming and thinking that this is an actual shooting, because that would just be no good. So that's kind of the reason why we wanted to send all of these different notifications to all these different people.
So launching the drill, active shooter drill, will be in the liberal arts building here. Teams of 2 to 4 officers would clear classrooms and work through the building. The date that would be set would be August 17th, 2019. And this is before students actually move onto campus and classes start. And then the time set to block off the building is 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And the training the students and staff, that's what this is for, is to learn the basics of an active shooter situation. Teaching students and staff to run, to hide, to fight, which one they should do first, or whatever may last. And then learning how to properly evacuate the building. You said keep your hands up, fingers spread, all that. Just you're digging in your pockets. It could be anything. You know, officers could think you're the shooter. So lockdown by public safety. The building will be locked down 30 minutes prior to starting that drill. And like she had said, this is for the safety of other people. We don't know, who's going to be on campus. They might think that this is not training and this is a real situation. So that's why we do it 30 minutes prior.
So the debriefing and the reflection are pretty important just because you are always going to have that one person that doesn't read their emails, doesn't pay attention, and they're going to walk by or come into the LA and, like we mentioned, they're going to think it's a real thing. So we just want the debriefing is just to avoid like raising alarm, making sure everyone is aware. You know, this was a drill. This takes place afterwards. Like this was a drill. This is how it went. It'll be in the form of a press conference, and we would have multiple people speak. Not too many, but we obviously have the director of public safety. Probably have one of the deans, or even maybe the president, just give a quick statement. Mostly have the people, like the key departments, have their department head just give a brief statement saying what their department did in the training, why it was important, how it went, if it was successful, things they think they need to change, etc. And then the reflection is an assessment. It's kind of goes along with the surveys we handed out. So it's the pre and the post. It'd be very similar, or if not the exact same survey. And that's just to help gauge, was this actually effective, or did this not work? Did people learn anything from this? Should we do this again in the future? Things like that.
Okay, so I'm gonna have you refer one last time to your handout that I'd given you. The first flyer that you see, it's how emergency procedures. This is found on the USI website, public safety, and that's what we first found this, and just kind of gathered hit points that we wanted to. And so if you flip the page, I had created this flyer, and so prior to making this, I'd actually had an interview with you and brought this to you and just kind of got your input and thoughts of this. And the biggest key element that you brought to my attention, call public safety, call public safety. It's not really 911 that you want to contact and get a hold of first, because they're not the ones really on campus. I mean, they are, but I mean, it'd be more useful to contact you. So the headings in bold, as you can see, they're just situations, what would emergency situations, like for instance, tornado, medical emergency, active shooter, fire, suspicious activity, and so forth. And underneath is just like the procedures that you would take place. In the middle, I just want to point out too, where it says incident awareness. This is something else that you had brought to my attention, how they're trying to get the ACT, assess the situation, call public safety, and take action. Trying to get the word out with that. And I mean, I think the biggest thing is just to make it mandatory along with the rave alerts. mandatory for the getting the maps out, just making more of a defined way of letting the students know and the teachers and everyone know to be on the same page. So this would just be displayed throughout campus and maybe even handed to the students as well first day.
Okay, so this is a little, I don't know, I feel like it's a little different than what we've been talking about, but it has to go with like just educating people on what to do, because like I said, none of us have really had any active shooter training since we've been in college, and for some of us that's 3 or 4 years. Like Cameron just graduated, and she's not really had anything in college besides, I don't know, just simple like during rotations of what to do. So we created this graphic for Run Hide Fight just to go on the toilet talks to start that here in the LA building, because currently we don't have anything. And I talked to a lot of like fellow students that I know, and based on the data that I got, like 1 in 5 students, or no, 4 in 5 students found that they do read the toilet talks, just because it's kind of a silly thing, but we tend to hold on to the things that are silly and odd rather than like another like handout or pamphlet that we can hand in and dispose in the trash. So it's something they can't throw away, something you'll see often, and as you can see, the 3 key words are run, hide, and fight. So it gets across the point of, if you're gonna remember anything, remember that, because that's gonna be really helpful in the situation.
So social media can be very vital during a crisis, and I know that the university has their own social media page, public safety has a few of their own social media pages. And the reason that this is so important is because social media provides a variety of platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all those, and they can distribute a wide amount of information very quickly. So the way that the university and public safety could utilize social media is first delivering the message. So social media is used to provide updates and valued information to the target audience, which is students, faculty, graduates, people like that. The second way that social media could be used is to monitor. So it is important to focus on delivering the content and less on engaging the audience. So the more content you have, the better. And then the last way social media can be used is addressing concerns. So if an individual has a complaint, it's important to act on that complaint quickly to respond. So if somebody says, oh, I don't like this, it is important to respond saying, how can we help before that turns into something worse? And then second is social listening. And this idea is fairly new now that we have smartphones, because they can pick up on like what you say and then they can register that. So it's the process of monitoring digital conversations to understand what customers are saying about a brand or industry online. So in this case, it would be the university or public safety. So like, what are people saying about the university? What are they saying about the job public safety is doing? And to implement this, first you need to determine the listening objectives. So what are we trying to improve response times? Are we trying to improve activity on social media? Second, identify where and what platform will be chosen to listen. Are we going to be listening through smartphones, laptops, things like that? Third, select listening tools based on the platforms used. And then set up the listening structure. And then lastly is to listen continuously. And so, I mean, it's important to monitor that, see what people are saying, see what we can improve, and it can even help tip off maybe if there's an active shooter or something might happen and stop it before it does happen. And then lastly, increasing following. I mean, I'm sure that's what every public institution wants to do, is increase their following, and it can be tricky to do. So the first is to choose the right networks, because each network has their own weaknesses and advantages based on what you need to do. So it's important to choose the right network. Second, the organization needs to set a goal. So what is the overall goal of the social media effort? Is it to engage customers or your audience, expand your audience, or get feedback? And a great way to track these items are analytics offered by almost all the social media platforms. If you go dig into their website, I know Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram all have analytical pages where you can track the amount of page followers you got in 1 month, engagements you had in 1 month, page likes, how many page views, all that can be tracked. And then third is to come up with a strategy, decide who is the audience, what topics are going to be covered, and when will this content be published. The fourth step is to make a creation plan with the audience in mind, what would students and faculty like to see. And the fifth step is select tools to automate posts. Staying on top of posting is very important. Facebook example has a schedule of post option. So if you make a post today, you can schedule it for next week. And an idea that we had was maybe hiring an intern for the public safety department that could schedule posts for them, like on Twitter, Facebook. And then lastly, it is important to monitor these platforms acting on any issues or problems that may arise.
Questions?
Questions?
Yeah. Great job.
My question to you, you've identified all the top points and everything, things that we even struggle with as far as that preparation and awareness. As far as staff and faculty, we kind of control them. We contact their bosses and say, hey, we're going to do this presentation, tell them to be there. Students are a little different. Were you all aware that this last fall at the orientation that we had two presentations scheduled, active shooter training? It was in the calendar for orientation. We had 3 people show up between the two presentations. Well, they're making it mandatory somehow. We hate to do it online. We like to talk, see how effective yours was talking. So what are your ideas for that?
I think it would need to be mandatory for classes or bonus points.
So we also talked about maybe an incentive of like doing a free lunch, because that's how you get college students to do this stuff. It seems kind of silly, but like a lot of events on campus that have high turnout, it's because they offered something free, and it does seem kind of silly, but a lot of times college students, if you offer them a free meal, will go. Even if it's free food, they don't have to pay for it, and yeah.
So I feel like.
And also, for me personally, I'm not going to be going to any presentations. Like, I mean, I live off campus. I mean, I don't know what like the different like who you're trying to get in, like all students. I only went to presentations either for like just for classes because I would get points, or it was a mandatory thing to go to. Like, it's sad and that stinks, but that's an incentive for me to go personally as a student.
With everything you've learned, most of these type of incidents happen in schools. Businesses. So this is information you've learned that you can take off campus too. So when you're in a mall, a movie theater, play that what if game, you've seen where the exits are. I know where I can run. I know where I can hide. What can I use as a weapon? 1 minute.
I would suggest that you make this presentation part of the.
We've been asked by some of those classes to do those presentations. Not all.
And that's the problem with human hiding is that everybody's doing something different. And so there's no continuity for these kinds of things.
But you've given me, now I've thought about the toilet talks. I've actually thought about that for the active shooter and just our, ACT. So I hadn't thought about that. Something I hadn't thought about, and I don't know how much buy-in, but, just, maybe just a paragraph in front of the syllabus, like you said. We can't force that to happen, but I think if we ask that, someone to include that, we might get some buy-in.
There are recommended syllabus, that for the first time in the last couple of years, we've had recommended syllabi language, so that's how Title IX language has to be in the syllabus. So does our disability statement, some other things, and the weather. We have a weather statement as well. And that was gone through CEDL, the education teacher learner, whatever it's called.
I think it'd be great if you have a map of where we're projecting times, like this syllabus would have the second floor.
Yeah, right, and after that. I had a question. I know I wanted to ask you all, is this third floor map correct?
No, Jimmy knows that.